Hi, I'm Justin Cronin, author of The Passage and The 12, and I'm proud to be here on Love Reading. I have to say the most significant change in my life since The Passage is I get to be a writer. Like most writers, I had a day job for many years. I was a teacher. I was a college professor here in Houston at Rice. A great job I was very lucky to have for 25 years. I got to work with wonderful students for many years. But since The Passage, first, I didn't have the time to teach, and then I really felt my life shifting to being a full-time writer, which that's what every writer really wants, isn't it? So that's been the greatest sort of change in my life. And I have to say the other one is now I know how I'm going to afford to send my kids to college. So the great middle class anxiety. So at least that was solved for me as well. Well, writing the 12 I'd never written a book before that was the continuation of a story. All my other books, you close the book, it ended at the end. So writing the 12 was very different because I knew on the one hand, I was picking up a story, but I also didn't want the 12 to be just a kind of long second act. I mean, I think that's the hazard of trilogies. I wanted it to be its own novel. So I had to think of it in two ways at the same time. So that was kind of an interesting exercise for me. I've always said I never want to write the same book twice. I want each book to have some different challenges to me as a writer, as The Passage was a huge challenge to kind of work in a big canvas. The 12 was an opportunity to kind of write a book that wanted to be two books at the same time, for both continuing a story and making its own new story. The other big change, of course, is now the book has fans. I mean, there are expectations of the book that I have to be aware of and want to be aware of. I mean, I want to give readers of The Passage the kind of story that they want and that they deserve, while also giving them something new, something surprising. I think it's true that every writer is a reader first. I mean, that's who we are. So writers are always asked, who are the writers that shaped who you are? And of course, the answer is, basically everything I ever read. I mean, I think the people who start as readers and then become writers are people who read like pickpockets from the start. They're drawing sort of lessons in storytelling that they then put to use from what they read. I grew up on a sort of steady diet of science fiction. Ray Bradbury died a couple of days ago, and I really wanted to have a wake in my house for Ray Bradbury because the first sort of pivotal reading moment that I remember was finishing the Martian Chronicles. I can tell you, everything about where I was and what was going on. It was a summer day. I was at my grandmother's house. I'd been to the beach. I remember it exactly. And I was so sort of startled by the experience of the end of that book that I knocked a bottle of mercurochrome off the table, which is, for those of you who don't remember mercurochrome, it's an antiseptic that stains really badly. And so I hope that in that house, which of course is long gone to us, I hope somewhere in that house there's still the stain of the mercurochrome on the carpet, because as that book sort of left an indelible mark on me, so the carpet carries the symbol of that. And I've been, there are many, many writers that have inspired me. I mean, that are with me all the time. And people who read my books know that they're seeing not just sort of hidden references, but often just overt acknowledgments of other writers, from Tolstoy to the zombie movies I love. There are these references to other books that are important to me because I feel like you should acknowledge that, and that you should say thank you. The book should contain an appreciative acknowledgement of the influences these writers have had on you as a writer. I think each of the books in the trilogy has sort of one major book operating in the background. I mean, there's lots, and as I've said that there's acknowledgments of these debts everywhere. I mean, people will see there's lots of Shakespeare, for instance, and I was a guy who grew up on science fiction novels, Heinlein, Asimov, Stephen King, all these guys. But I was also an English major in college. I've been an English professor for many years, and Shakespeare, King Lear, for instance, is really one of the great apocalyptic stories. So there's much made of this in the trilogy. But I'd say the one book that was in the background, kind of in my head, operating in the behind the scenes for the first book was Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, which is a Western. And people are surprised sometimes to hear this, but a major aspect of The Passage is a group of characters experiencing the West for the first time. You know, they'd been locked away in isolation, and so they are encountering this sort of immense, pure, dangerous landscape of the American West in some way, in much the same ways that, you know, the first Europeans encountered the West. That it's kind of one of our great themes in American writing, and it's also just a hell of a novel. I mean, Lonesome Dove is one of my all-time favorite books, and you know, it's a masterpiece. You know, it's both a great Western, sort of following the rules of a Western, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. It's great literature.